Hi, I hope you're having an amazing day. As you saw from the title of this video, we're going to be going through all of my eyeshadow palettes. So if that interests you, just keep on watching. Alright, so let's start off with the first palette. The first one we're talking about is from Hot Topic. This is the Master of Fright from the Nightmare Before Christmas. The palette does come with a mirror, and then you get these shades here. And these are really nice. However, the actual formula sucks, so I wouldn't really recommend this. Alright, so let's talk about a palette that I'm actually going to declutter. This is actually a palette that I purchased from Ulta Beauty, but unfortunately this palette came broken. We have a couple of Jeffree Star palettes. We have the Conspiracy palette. Honestly, I haven't used this in such a long time. Next, we have the Blood Sugar palette. I just don't reach for it because the packaging is so bulky, but again, this is another palette to reach for soon. A couple of big palettes in that little section, starting off with the Beauty Treats Cherry Blossom Eye and Face palette, and this one was in a Shop My Stash if you remember it. Gosh, this is probably one that I'm going to declutter. This is the All Eyes on Me palette. This was a gift for Christmas a couple years ago, but honestly I am not going to use this. Next up, we have the Jaclyn Hill palette, and this is the first one. This one's really nice, especially for those everyday kind of looks. Next one here is the Beauty Creations Olivia palette. This was also a gift a couple years ago. Really nice palette, however the formula is not great. Next one is the Talk to Me by Pro Luxe. This is an interesting palette. It comes with a lot of colorful tones, and this one's really nice. Next, we have the Beauty Treats Free Spirit palette. It comes with eyeshadow shades. We get a couple face shades in here as well. This is a really nice palette to gift, but again, if you're looking for that quality, I think you're going to be a little disappointed. The last one in that tray is the Profusion Sienna's palette. Can't believe that I forgot about this, because again, I used to rave about it so much. I always talk about this palette and I completely forgot. I've been putting these bigger palettes in a different area. Alright, now we're going to get into the palettes that are in this drawer. As you can see, I have all of my LA Colors palettes that we talked about in a recent video. We have the Sunshine palette. Oh no, I always call it Sunshine. This is a Sunset palette. We have the Cool palette. We have the Rose palette. Again, I did do a whole video on these palettes. I'll have it down below. This is the Bright palette. And this is the one that I already had. This one's in nude. So I'm going to start off with the palettes that are on the top, starting off with the Beauty Creations Espresso Yourself palette. This one's so cute. I've raved about this palette before. I love the color story in here. It's a really interesting color story. I used to love reaching for the shade Coffee Sluts, which is on the end there in the first row, as well as the shade Macchiato. Both of those shades were amazing. I love throwing the shade Grounded on the outer part of my eye. This is a palette that I gifted to my sister a couple years back for Christmas, and I had to pick it up for myself. This is such a beautiful color story. I definitely needed it. I love it, and I am so glad that I have it in my collection because I love the color story, especially like the Dulce de Leche shade. I love that they added some pinks in here. Because you know, that's not really traditional coffee shades. They also added some purples. I love the color story, and I definitely have to remind myself to use this and pick it up soon because it's so beautiful. Next, we have the Elf and Chipotle palette. I actually did a whole video using this palette and some other new makeup products. I also mentioned this, I believe, in a ranking my newest eyeshadow palettes video. All the videos that I mentioned in are going to be down below, but this one is really nice. I really like the color story. Now, it is all over the place. In theory, I like the color story, I like the packaging and everything, I like the pan placement and stuff. However, when it comes to the actual using of this palette, I don't like the color story because it's a little difficult to create a look that's different each time. The looks just tend to look the same each time that I use this palette, because I feel like the color story is a little limiting. But yeah, I mean, this is cute. It was a cute concept, but not something that I recommend. Now, this palette from Carter Beauty, this is a smooth nude palette. I actually just uploaded a video today. I'm using the Carter Beauty makeup, so that's going to be down below if you didn't watch that. It probably went up last week. This one's really cute. Definitely a interesting palette. I like the formulation. I like the packaging. I really like that they're all matte shades because I don't really have any palettes that are all matte in my collection, so I like having this option. I really like the color story in here. Some might argue it's a little boring, but for me, I really like having this type of palette in my collection because it's really unique. I don't have anything else like this palette, so I'm glad that I own this. You guys have seen this before if you watch my other collection videos. This is my Too Faced palette. It comes with this little section here, which comes with some glitters. You get 2 matte shades, and this was part of the Too Faced seasonal palette thing that they always come out with. And then we get this part, which is really cute as well. I really like the formula of this palette. I've talked about this before. I love the formulation in here. I love the color story. I feel like these shades are really pigmented. They blend really nicely. So if this happens to come back for the holiday season, I definitely recommend. It also comes with a face palette, which I mentioned in my other collection videos. And it also came with a liquid lipstick. It's a really nice set. So if it happens to come back, I definitely recommend you guys gift it, or if you want it for yourself, it's a really nice package deal. A couple new palettes here. So this one here is the Pure and Barbie palette. This is the round 2 palette. This one I also used in a video for you guys, along with some other products from the Pure and Barbie collection round 2. I'm not sure if that video is already up, but if it is, I'll have that on the screen and down below. This is really nice. I was really blown away by the formulation in this palette. It's really pigmented, really blendable. I like the color story. I feel like the color placement, like the shadow placement, is interesting. Like the interesting shapes and stuff. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I feel like it's a really nice and festive kind of way to place the shadows. It's cute. I really like the formula, and I like the look that I created using this palette. And this one is the Pure and Barbie round 1 palette. And you guys know how I feel about the packaging. I love the smell. It smells so good. It does come with a glitter. I love the color story in here. You can definitely create everyday looks along with colorful looks and pops of color. I love this palette. Now the formula itself isn't that great, but I don't know, something about this palette. I just like the color story. I like the packaging. Everything about this I love, so I'm so happy that I own this. This one is a dupe for the Urban Decay. I believe it's called Born to Run palette. It's really interesting. However, just the color story, I feel like it's all over the place. Also another palette that I feel like it's a little difficult to create different type of looks with. Even though you get a variety of tones in here, most of them are shimmer shades. I don't know if I mentioned who this is from. This is the C Color Around the World palette. As you can see, the packaging is really nice. It also comes with a mirror, so if you wanted to purchase the Urban Decay but it's too expensive for you and you like the color story, I recommend you try the C Color one out, just so you could see if the color story is for you. Because I thought I liked it, but it is a lot of shimmers, and I am a matte girl. I really like my matte shades to deepen out the outer corner. We have mostly shimmer shades in this palette. Next we have another Nightmare Before Christmas palette. This is the Wonderful Nightmare palette. This one's also from Hot Topic, and this is one that I really love. Opposed to the other one where the formulation was not great, this one works so well. You got a lot of deep tones, a lot of grungy tones. You get these two like kind of Christmassy tones in here. I really like using the Now and Forever shade as a highlight. It works rather well. I like using this shade for setting my under eyes. I even use Trick or Treat as a contour shade. All of these shades work so well. So if you see this one at your local Hot Topic, I definitely recommend. If you want to gift it or if you want to use it for yourself, the formula in here will not disappoint. Next is the BH times It's My Ray Ray palette. This palette is in my Shop My Stash for this month. You get eyeshadow shades as well as face shades. I feel like the face shades are a little deep for me. I really like the fact that I can mix and match to create my perfect shade, and I really like the color story in here. I mean, you're gonna hear me saying this a lot with my palettes, but I don't reach for this. I kind of forget about it. But I really love the color story in here, and these shimmer shades are crazy pigmented in this palette, as well as they're very shimmery, and they're like that foiled type of formula. They're really nice. Definitely recommend if you see this palette and you like the color story, you know you're gonna reach for it, I recommend you pick it up. And now that we're here talking about that palette, I also have a dupe, which is a Romantic Beauty palette, and I don't remember the name of this one, but this is the one in 01. It comes in 2 different color stories, and that is how this palette looks. Literally the same exact color story. You get purples, you get the oranges, you get those kind of foiled shades as well. I think they did a really good job at kind of embodying what that palette has. So if you can find the BH and Ray Ray palette, this one is also really amazing from Romantic Beauty. Next up, I have the NYX Sugar Trip Squad palette. This is one that I thought of like decluttering, but honestly after like further usage of this palette, the formula is really nice. I like the shimmer shades. They tend to be a little dry. As you can see, there's also like that hard pan on them, but the matte formula is really nice in these, and I really love the color story, so that's why I keep it around. Next, I have 2 of the EBIN New York mini palettes. I have the Everlasting Splendor and Nature's Embrace. I did do a whole video using both palettes on my eyes. I love this formulation. I've raved about it for so long. I also own a couple of their bigger palettes. These do not come with a mirror, but look at that. The color stories that they came out with, these little palettes are stunning. They're really inexpensive and the formulation is out of this world. I've raved about the EBIN New York formulation for a long time because it is just that amazing. Definitely check out that video. I'll have it down below. I really love the look that I created with both palettes, and this one does come with that kind of shimmer shade at the top like that. However, I'm not going to use that, but I really like the other shades that come in here. We also have the Everlasting Splendor, which comes with more of those everyday tones. I say the only one that's not my favorite from this palette is Mosaic, just because I don't really like that tone of shade. But as you can see, we do get a shimmer shade at the top. The shades in here also blend really nicely, so whatever color story you get, you know that the matte formulation from EBIN New York is amazing. Their shimmer formula is really nice as well. Definitely recommend these. I have a couple palettes in this type of packaging. The first palette that I have here is the Beauty Creations Dare to Be Bright Bossy palette, and those are the shades there. As you can see, you get some bright pop of color, and this is definitely a really fun palette. You get some glitters in here. The shimmers in here are really nice. I really like this palette. However, I haven't used it in a long time, so I'll definitely have to reach for this again. And then I have two of the UCANBE palettes, starting off with the Grape Shot palette. I did a whole video using some new UCANBE makeup, so that video is going to be down below. But also I mentioned this in some current like favorites videos and stuff. This is a really great palette, really amazing formula. I have a nice selection of palettes, so I definitely recommend you guys check those out. But this palette here specifically is stunning. Then they also have this one in My Honey, which as you can see comes with more everyday tones. This one's also really nice, but I like my purple one a little more. I have a handful of EBIN New York palettes, as you can see. I also did a whole video ranking these palettes, which is going to be down below. Starting off with the Coral Oasis palette. That's a look at that one. We have the Golden Empire palette. Definitely one of my favorite palettes. Comes with more everyday tones. I love their formula, as I mentioned. Next we have my #1 favorite, which is the Cleopatra's Love. This one, as you can see, comes with more purple tones. Really stunning, great formula. Next we have the Eternal Paradise palette, and this one is newer to me from EBIN New York. A really stunning color story as well. And another one of my top palettes is the Goddess Treasure palette. As you can see, you get more colorful tones in this one. This one's definitely for that person who loves creating colorful looks, because again, their formulation is stunning, and I do have looks using all of these palettes on my Instagram. Next I have the Color Spell Solstice palette. This is one that I kind of forgot about, but it definitely reminds me of the Profusion Sienna's palette, and it also gives me vibes of the Modern Renaissance because you do get those kind of berry tones. You get some oranges in here. I remember I really like this palette, so I'll definitely have to reach for this soon. This is the portion where we're going to get into a little bit of a declutter. The first one is the Bad Habit Pretty Poison palette. All of these are from Bad Habit. I also own the Athena palette as well as the Aphrodite palette. So this is the Aphrodite palette. All of these palettes are really old, so I am going to declutter, but this color story is stunning. But I know C Color has some dupes for this palette as well, so I'll probably just pick those up if I end up missing the color story. But this one here will be decluttered today. Next we have the Athena palette, also another palette that I loved. I used to reach for this so much. However, I haven't touched it in such a long time, specifically because the formula is not that great. But I did love this at some point, but also it's really old, so I never touch it, and I have newer palettes, so this one will be decluttered today. This one I feel like I should declutter, but I am going to keep it just a little longer because I really love the color story. But if I feel like I don't reach for it on the next collection video, I am going to have to declutter this because I just don't reach for it. But this was definitely one of my favorite Bad Habit palettes ever, so I'm going to keep it just a little longer. Next we have the Revolution Pro palette. It's called the All That Glistens Luxe Shadow palette. You can see this one comes with a lot of glitter shades as well as a base shade, which is like a cream. This palette I never reach for, but I am going to keep it just because I love using glitters on special occasions, and I know I'm going to get back into them soon, especially during the holiday seasons and stuff, because I really like this palette, and I love that it has a green glitter as well as a yellow glitter and a red glitter, so it's something that I'm going to use soon. But as of now, I haven't really reached for it because the matte formulas in here are not that great, and that kind of deters me, but I still reach for this whenever I need one of the glitters. Next we have the Beauty Creations Seduce Me palette. Now a theme that you guys are going to see is that I love my purple shadows. This one's really stunning. I did do a whole review video on this palette. It feels like such a long time ago. I did do a whole review. I talked about each and every shade in here. I did compare and contrast each one. I compared them to different Beauty Creations palettes and stuff, so I'll have that video down below if you want to watch it. But this palette is really nice. And next one is the Color Story in Bloom Pressed Pigment palette. This is one that I purchased at Five Below years ago. They do always tend to take the color stories of their palettes and just repackage them, so the packaging might be different at your local Five Below. But if you guys have the similar color story, these shades are stunning. I love it. I'm so glad that I picked it up. However, I know there's people that do not like staining on their lid. The palette is called the pigment palette because they do stain your eyelid. So if you don't like that, maybe stay away from this palette. But for me, it doesn't really bother me. So I really like this palette here. I love the color story. Again, it gives me that kind of modern Renaissance vibe. I love that it comes with pinks, it comes with oranges. I really like this color story, and the formula is pretty nice as well. Next, I have two of the LA Colors palettes. So we have the Nude Rush. Remember, the formula wasn't that great in here, but I really love the color story, so I'm going to keep both of these. And we have the Nude Heat palette, which comes with those more grungy tones. I do have a couple of Hot Topic palettes in here. Next, I have the Blockbuster palette. That's interesting. It comes with all matte shades, as you can see. Now, it's a little difficult coming up with a look with this because it is all mattes. But unlike the Carter Beauty palette that's also all mattes, that other palette is more everyday tone, so it's a little easier to come up with looks. And then this one is just like the color story is a little all over the place, but it does remind me of like the Blockbuster shades. So for the theme, I think it's cute, but if you're going to purchase this for like the actual shadow formula, I think you're going to be disappointed. Next, we have the Prism Makeup Supreme Femme. Purchased this on Amazon a couple years back. I kind of regret it because I never ever reached for this. I didn't even do a video with this palette, so we'll probably have to bring this out soon because I remember I liked the shimmer formula. I like that it comes with two different color stories. As you can see, both of them are a dupe for like the Huda Beauty little mini palettes, but I never reached for this. But you do get the kind of grungy side and that summer side, so I'll have to reach for this soon. So we have the She Makeup Concert palette. A couple months ago I did drop this palette, which is why some of the shades are broken, but I really like the shimmer formulation in this palette. It's stunning, and the matte formula is okay, but I am going to keep this as well. So going more into the Hot Topic palettes, I have the Cup of Noodles eyeshadow palette. I did do a video using this palette as well, which is going to be down below, but as you can see, you get some matte shades in here. Shimmer shades in here are very comparable to matte shades. You honestly can't even see shimmers in them. But I was really surprised at the look that I created with this, but it's not the most amazing formula. This is the Nickelodeon palette. I don't know if this one's still available, but I really loved this palette for a while. A palette that brought me out of my comfort zone because the color story is so all over the place. But I haven't touched it in a long time, so we'll have to play with this one again. It's newer to me. This is the Lilo & Stitch palette. And I did also just talk about this in a video. This one's really nice. Definitely one that surprised me. The formula is pretty nice in this one. So if you want to purchase it for yourself or a gift, I definitely recommend. Next, we have the Romantic Beauty Dessert palette. And this one is a dupe for the GLAMLITE Cake palette. A really beautiful color story. The shimmer formula in this is amazing. I did do a whole video using this palette and some other new products as well, so I have that down below. I have to reach for this again. So much fun using this palette because of the color story. Also, the formulation is so stunning. It was really easy to blend and pack on, so it's definitely one that I recommend you check out. So I have the Transition palette from Pinky Rose. Now this is one that I wouldn't feel bad about decluttering, but I think I'm going to keep this because you guys know how I feel about my purple eyeshadow, so I am again going to keep it just to have. Next, I have the Smoke and Mirrors Pearl palette. As you can see, I did purchase this at the 99 for $2.99. Use this palette one time, so I'm going to have to give it another try and see what I think. So I can't really speak on the formula, but I remember it was just fine. It does come with a variety of shadow formulations, so I am going to have to reach for this and see what I think of it. I have the Beauty Treats Color Spectrum palette. Again, another palette that I wouldn't really be mad about decluttering, just because I haven't really gotten a chance to use it. But with these palettes specifically, I see that some of the shimmer shades are always like oversprayed. I don't like that about them, and also the shimmers are more like they turn into like matte shades on the lid, so I'm gonna have to use this and see what I think, and if I don't like it, I'm just gonna declutter because I just have way too many palettes, but I am gonna keep it for now. Next, I have the Color Story Mirage palette. I've spoken about this palette before. I love the formula. I like the color story. Nothing much to say about it. I recommend if you see. They do offer these at Target in different color stories, so I definitely recommend you guys check it out depending on what your preference is. Next, I have the Beauty Creations Murillo Twins collab. This one is the Brittany palette, which comes with more colorful tones. As I mentioned before, this is a really great formula when you compare it to other beauty creation palettes. But when you look at it on its own, I think this is an okay formula. It's a little hard to blend, so it takes a little while to create a look. But this is also another palette that I did a whole review on. Next we have the Beauty Treats Nude Attitude palette. Really great palette, perfect for that everyday kind of person. I love the color story in here. I also did a video with this. I love how that look came out, so I definitely recommend you guys check out that video. Stunning. I feel like there's a lot of empty space in this palette, but I really like the way that they packaged it, and the color story again is stunning. So I have the Beauty Creations Mini Pro palette in volume 4. This one comes with more berry tones, some purple tones. If you guys saw, you guys know. You kind of had to be there to know what I think of this palette, so I'm just going to leave it how it is. But the formula does need a little work. We have the Beauty Creations Boho Babe palette. This was part of a mystery box from Beauty Creations. I love the color story. I don't really remember what I think of the formula. Next, I have the Makeup Obsession Jordan palette. This is a palette that I raved about. This is definitely a palette that I recommend. I love the shades in here. They blend really easily. The shimmers are stunning, so I definitely recommend you guys check this out. It does come in a variety of color stories, again at Target, so definitely check these out. Next, I have the She Glam Rhapsody palette. I also did a whole video on the She Glam makeup that I purchased, which is also going to be down below. I wasn't the biggest fan of this palette, honestly, but I did purchase another one just to check out their formula again, because this one I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of. Next, I have the Romantic Beauty My Love palette. The shades in this palette, I've mentioned it in a recent video, but I feel like this palette comes with a lot of shimmer shades and not a lot of matte shades, which means that whenever I do my looks using this palette, they just tend to look the same. But I really love the colors in here that they chose, but I also love their shimmer formula. It's stunning. Their matte formula is really blendable as well. So if you haven't checked out Romantic Beauty's eyeshadow palette formula, I definitely recommend it. So I have a bunch of Metamorphosis eyeshadow palettes. The first one is the Moo palette from Metamorphosis. I really like this one. If you didn't know, I do have a coupon code with them to save you 15% off. That'll be on the screen. But this is a all matte palette. Next, we have the Ba Ba eyeshadow palette. Comes with purple tones, really nice. It comes with 2 glitters. So we have the Oink palette. This one is more of a pink kind of color story. Also comes with 1 glitter. And lastly, we have the Lily Croaks palette. And this one is more of a green kind of color story. Really stunning. I did create a look with this on my Instagram, and I love how that look came out. We'll have to use this for a video soon, but I love this, and also their brush set that came with this palette as well. I have the Bon Voyage palette from Beauty Trend. This is a palette that I've had for so many years. I love the fact that it comes with face shades. You get eyeshadow shades as well as some lipstick shades on the bottom. This is definitely a perfect palette for traveling. Next, we have the BH Cosmetics Color Festival palette. Not the biggest fan of this. I don't like the color story. I don't like the formula, so that's pretty much what I'm gonna say about it. But I'm not gonna declutter. I'm gonna keep this in my collection a little longer. And if I feel like I don't reach for it, I'm gonna declutter it in another video. Next, we have the Revolution and Jack palette. This one's a really nice color story. I did purchase this at TJ Maxx or Marshalls for really cheap, and I really love, again, the color story. The formula is really nice as well. Next, we have the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. It's a really amazing palette. I love the color story. The formula is stunning. Definitely recommend this one. Next, we have the Santee Pro Finish palette. This is actually one that I'm going to declutter just because it kind of sucks. The formula sucks. The color story sucks. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Next, we have the Profusion Amber palette. Also another one that I'm going to declutter. I've had this for so many years. It is a dupe for the Modern Renaissance palette. Honestly, don't reach for it ever, so I'm going to declutter this one. Next, we have the e.l.f. Retro Paradise palette. Formula sucks in this palette. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I've talked about this before in other videos. I was really disappointed by the formula in this. I know some people really enjoyed this formula, but I just don't. I feel like it's really hard to work with. However, I'm not going to declutter. I'm just going to keep this in my collection. This is To the Moon and Back palette. I am going to keep this. I love it when I do like smoky kind of looks. It's so stunning. It comes with a highlight and a blush. I love the shades in here. They blend beautifully. So I'm going to end up keeping this one. I have the Hard Candy Aphrodisiac palette. This one is from the Dollar Tree. I haven't gotten a chance to use it, so I'm going to keep this one. Next, we have the C Color Angel palette from the 99. I've talked about this palette before. I was really blown away by the formula in this palette, and I really love how it brings me out of my comfort zone. Because the color story is all over the place, I really like this palette for some reason, so I am going to keep this. I have 3 of the ABH palettes. I have the Subculture palette, I have the Riviera palette, and lastly I have the Alyssa Edwards palette. I don't really reach for my ABH palettes, but I am going to keep them. Next, we have the Cheetos and Riley Rose palette. So you guys know I did a whole video on. This was in a Shop My Stash recently. This is a really nice color story. I just didn't really reach for it, and I don't reach for it often. But I love bringing this out occasionally and doing a full like Hot Cheetos video. So we are going to do that again soon. So I'm going to keep this. I have 2 palettes from YL Cosmetics. Both of these palettes I won in a giveaway. This one here is the Jennifer palette. Love, love, love the color story, but I also love the formula in both palettes. So I'm going to be keeping both of them. And this one here is the Carnaval palette. Next we have the Ulta Beauty Beauty Babe palette. It comes with eyeshadows as well as face shades. So I'm going to keep this. I have the 90s Baby Throwback palette. I like keeping a couple palettes with like a colorful color story because I love having that as an option in my collection. So I'm going to keep this. I also like the formulation. I have the Juvia's Place The Queen palette. And these are more of universal shades, so I could use these on my face as well as my eyes. But I do keep it with my eyeshadow palettes because these shades are stunning. But I haven't reached for this since I filmed my video on this, so I am going to keep this. I have the Beauty Creations Hot Fire palette. I definitely recommend you guys check this out if you haven't already. Especially because the color story is very reminiscent of the Naked Heat palette. So if you wanted to pick up the Urban Decay but you don't want to pay the money, this one is a really nice dupe for it. The color story in here is really similar to it, and also the formula is really nice in this palette. Next I have the C Color Tropical palette, which was $1.99. This is supposed to be a dupe for a Natasha Denona palette. I think this is an okay palette. C Color has some other palettes that work better, I feel. But this is a really nice option if you're looking for C Color eyeshadow palettes and you wanted to try out one that's similar to the Natasha Denona color story. Next we have the Essence Spice Up Your Life palette. These have been popping up at my local TJ Maxx and Marshall, so if you want this, you'll definitely find different color stories from this type of collection. It's a gift, so I haven't really touched it honestly since I got it, but we'll definitely have to do a video using this one here. Right, so this is the Bad Habit After Hours palette. Again, one that I'm going to declutter. Keeping this in hopes that I'm going to pan every single shade in here, but that's not, it doesn't look like that's happening. I have so many other palettes to tend to, so I am going to end up decluttering this one. Next I have the Sanderson Sisters palette from 90s Babies Cosmetics. I did do a whole video unboxing their mixed mystery bag as well as their Sanderson Sisters bundle. Definitely recommend if you guys like the Sanderson Sisters. They still have this on their website. The formula is stunning. Definitely recommend this one. So we have the Color Spell Shadow Go Round eyeshadow palette. I do a video using this palette, really stunning. However, I haven't used it since then, so I am going to keep this. And next we have the Violet Voss Sweet Violet palette, which is newer to my collection. I'm not the biggest fan of the formula in here, but I am going to keep it because it is newer to me, but I also love my purple tones. I have a couple of ColourPop palettes, starting off with the Midnight Masquerade palette. This one I actually won in a giveaway. I haven't touched this in such a long time. I did use this for a palette bingo, I believe, but I haven't touched it since then, so I'm going to keep this. I have the Sweet Talk palette. It is newer to me. Honestly, wasn't the biggest fan of this formula, but I am going to keep it because again, it's newer to me and I've wanted this palette for such a long time. Now this is one that I'm going to declutter. This is the Academy of Color eyeshadow palette. This is a prismatic one. I did purchase this a long time ago because it reminded me of a Kylie Cosmetics palette, but honestly I don't reach for this anymore, so I am going to declutter it. I have this one from Luxasa, which I got on Amazon. I honestly forgot about this palette, so I have to bring this out and play with it again. Again, you guys know how I feel about my purple tones. Love this. I remember the formula being amazing, so I have to reach for this again. Another fave is the Maybelline Soda Pop palette. I do have these at the 99-cent store now for really cheap, so definitely check them out because the formula is really stunning. And we have the LA Colors eyeshadow palette. This is a nude palette. It is more of an everyday kind of smoky palette. Really nice palette. However, I never reach for it, but I am going to keep it because times when I feel like reaching for this palette out of nowhere when I want to do a smoky look, so I am going to keep it for that reason. Next I have the Amuse eyeshadow palette. I completely forgot about this palette. I was in love with this. This is from Shop My Stash. Definitely recommend if it's still available on there. It's such a nice formula. Next we have the Date Night palette, also from Shop My Stash. This is from the A20 line. Now it didn't come with these shadows specifically, but these are the shades that I put in this palette. Really smoky, very different from my other palettes, so I'm going to keep this. I have two more of the ColourPop palettes. The first one here is the Meant to Be palette. This is another palette where the looks tend to look the same after a while, but again, I'm going to keep it. I really like the color story, and this is actually one of my very first palettes that I purchased myself from ColourPop. And then we have the Child palette. One of these shades did end up popping out, but this is such a nice color story. Again, I'm going to keep it. This is the Ulta Beauty palette that came in their $20 set. I am going to declutter this one, and I'm going to keep this one that I got recently in a kit because I just like the color story in this one a little more, and I'm going to get rid of the one that I got a couple years ago. So we have the J Cat Beauty Dia y Noche palette. This one is a rainbow palette. I am going to keep it. I feel like the formula is okay, but again, it is like a rainbow palette. I love having this type of palette in my collection, just in case I'm feeling that colorful vibe. And I like that it comes with mostly mattes. Next we have two from Seduce, and these are both from Amuse. The first one is more of an everyday kind of palette. I'm going to keep both of them. I love the formula in both, and I love Amuse Cosmetics from Seduce. I feel like they offer such great products for so cheap. And this one I like using whenever I'm feeling that kind of smoky vibe. Really stunning formula again. It smells really good, and I like the formula in here. Another Amuse palette from Seduce. This one is more again of an everyday kind of palette. Another one from Seduce from Amuse, and the last Amuse palette from Seduce. This has to be my favorite one. I love this color story. And then we have this one, which is new to my collection from Wet n Wild. This is a Nude Awakening palette, and this one is more of a smoky palette. I did do a whole Dollar Tree video using this. So we have this Angelica palette from Walmart, and this was a gift from my sister. It's such a cute color story. I was gonna do like a 5-minute makeup challenge a while back, but I just never got to it. If you guys still want to watch that, let me know down below. Really cute palette. Next we have the BC Rosy Nudes eyeshadow palette. I am going to declutter this today. I'm just never going to reach for this. I've had this for so many years in my collection. I never touch it, so I am going to declutter this. I have a lot of LA Colors palettes. We have the Stunning palette. We have the Classy palette. This one here is the Stylish palette. Next we have the Sassy palette. We have the Flashy palette. We have the Stellar palette. Lastly, we have the Smoky palette. I am going to keep all of these because I always compare these to newer LA Colors launches, but also I really like the formula in all of them, so I'm going to keep them all. I have the Profusion Mini Rubies palette. I did do a whole video using some Profusion makeup like a year ago, I believe. Really stunning formula. I just never reach for it. But I like having the option of a red color story in my collection. I have two LA Colors palettes. Here's the Pinky Nude palette. This one is the Softly Nude palette. I have this one from Starry, and this is from the Seduce site. And I am going to declutter this palette today. I don't really use this. I kept it for the formula. I feel like the shimmer formula is really nice, and all of them are shimmer shades, but I never touch it, so I'm going to declutter this one. I have one mini bite-sized eyeshadow palette from e.l.f. The Jalapeno palette. You guys know I love this, so I'm going to keep. I have the LA Colors palette, and here it's called Wildflowers. I feel like I am going to end up keeping this just for a little while longer. If I feel like I don't reach for it, I'm going to declutter, but as of now, I'm going to keep. So we have the Magic by Santee palette. I've had for so many years, but I am going to keep it just because I like the shimmer formula, and I like having it just in case I want to use it one day. So I am going to keep this. A couple more of the mini ColourPop palettes. This one here is Ballad. This one here is an Amour. This one is Cashmere Forever. And lastly, we have High Society. I'm going to end up keeping all of them because they are newer to me, but also I like having some options for ColourPop in my collection, so I'm going to keep all four. I recently spoke about these palettes from Smoke and Mirrors. We have the Rose Gold palette. We have the Dreamcatcher palette. Lastly, we have the I Am the One palette. Like I mentioned these in my 99 cents for collection video, but I think it's time to get rid of them. Honestly, looking at them right now, I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep them. I don't want to get rid of them, but I'm not going to use them. I've kept this for so many years, just like in the back of my drawer, and I never touch them. So yeah, I'm going to declutter all three. I have some new LA Colors palettes. The first one is the Blueberry Blast. Comes with more blue tones. I did do a look with this on my Instagram. We have the one in Berry Blast. And we have the one in Lemon Drop. I did do a video using this palette as well. I'm going to keep all my Amuse palettes. And these are all from Seduce. I love the color stories. The formula is stunning, so I'm going to keep all three. But this is a blue one. This is a more smoky one, really stunning. This one is a more pinky tone. I have three palettes from Second Love Cosmetics, all from the Electric Vibes collection. This is the Hot Pink palette. This one here is Hot Coral. We have the Hot Purple. All of them are stunning, great formula, so I'm going to keep all three. And lastly, we have three Santee palettes. As of lately, these are available on the Seduce site. This is a Strawberry Shake palette. The Cherry Fantasy palette. So we have the Ocean palette. I'm going to keep all three. The formula is not great, but I really like just having them around, so I'm going to keep them a little longer, keeping all three Santee palettes. And this palette here was a gift, just as a kind of sentiment. I'm going to keep this. It was for my boyfriend. I don't really use it on my eyes, so I'm going to keep this. And that was the last palette. Alright, so I am getting rid of 14 palettes. For other palettes I'm keeping, I did make some space. I'm going to have to reorganize this. This was my entire eyeshadow palette collection. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.